Just when you get that audience shot, okay?
Ladies and gentlemen, Robin McGraw. Ready for Dr. Phil?
Scroll down, Michelle, to my reverse.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Everybody take trash.
Today's going to be a changing day in your life. You've never had anybody working harder to bring you to the threshold of change than right now. Well, this is baby Lee, who was brutally beaten and nearly killed when she was just 30 days old. She suffered a brain bleed from being punched, thrown to the ground, and stomped on. The most horrifying thing of all, the attacker was her own father.
Today on an all-new Dr. Phil.
He kicked her in her head. You could almost see a footprint.
I'll kill the son of a bitch if I get my hands on him.
Jenny says she will always have a relationship with her son, despite his being sentenced to 12 years in prison.
I will never turn my back on him.
You made a list of excuses of why he should not be accountable. This man stomped her head, gave her 2 brain bleeds. It was a miracle little Lee survived, and today she is a healthy 4-year-old. Now, Emma and her daughter Jenny recall the day they almost lost her. Take a look.
On March the 28th, 2015, I got a call from my daughter. All she said was, there's been a family emergency.
I called Jordan around 10:30 in the morning just to check and see how things were going with the baby. I could just sense something wasn't completely right, so I did rush over. When I got there, I heard Lee crying from outside of the apartment complex. Lee already had a black eye on the left side. When I asked Jordan what happened, he said that she had fallen off the bed. Obviously, a 30-day-old baby doesn't fall off the bed.
When I walked in my house, the baby was crying. She had bruises on her head. Her right eye was totally red. She just looked horrible. My daughter said, Jordan beat the baby.
She was yelling, where the is Jordan? Where is he? I'm gonna kill him.
I called the police and told them that my grandson had beat his baby. My next telephone call was to him. I said, you better hope the police get to you before I do, because I will kill you.
Lee was in the hospital for 5 days. She had 2 brain bleeds, 2 black eyes, severe bruising to the left side of her face and head, and she had bruises on her rib cage where he had squeezed her.
The next day, I went with my daughter to the apartment, and there was about a 1-foot square section missing from the carpet. My grandson told a friend that he had placed Lee on the floor and stomped on her. And that was the reason the carpet was taken up for evidence.
Jordan did completely confess. For Jordan's sentencing, I wrote a letter to the judge asking for lenience due to Jordan's disability. The judge sentenced him to 12 years.
It's just an unspeakable crime what he did.
I absolutely support my son, and I always will.
Well, Emma says despite Jordan being locked up for nearly beating his baby daughter to death, she is still concerned for her granddaughter's well-being because Jenny refuses to keep her son Jordan out of Lee's life.
My grandson is dead to me. I can never imagine having any kind of relationship with him, ever. I'll kill the son of a bitch if I get my hands on him. That's how I feel about it. My daughter Jenny has remained in contact with her son during the course of his incarceration. She writes to him regularly. They speak on the phone. I've never understood the relationship that my daughter has with her son. To me, it's just sick and dysfunctional. She has mailed him pictures of the baby. I don't think he has the right to even say the baby's name, let alone have a picture of her. He barely has rights as a human being as far as I'm concerned. There's a restraining order prohibiting Jordan from having any contact with Lee, and that includes having contact with Jenny because she has custody of Lee. Earlier this year, she had a separate phone that she used to talk to her son. One night, the baby came into my room. She was pretending to talk on the phone. And I said, "Honey, who are you talking to?" She said, "Jordan." The fact that she knows his name infuriates me. I said, "Don't ever, ever talk to this man. He's a bad, bad man." Contacted the Department of Corrections and told them about the contact that was occurring between Jenny and Jordan. She denied me contact with Lee for 2 months as my punishment for betraying her. My only concern is what is best for Lee. Lee is the reason I live. I would die for her. I would kill for her. She's a very, very special little girl. That she survived what she did and has turned into the most wonderful, fantastic child, and that's my reward.
So everybody understands this. You're Jenny's mother, and Jordan is Jenny's son, and Lee, the baby, has now been adopted. So Jenny is both the grandmother and the mother because she's now adopted the child.
And I'm the great-grandmother and the grandmother.
Yeah, and it is very clear that she is not to allow any contact between Jordan and Lee, correct? There's
a restraining order prohibiting him from having any contact with Lee until Lee is 13 years old.
When this happened, she called a family meeting. I don't understand the theory under which you find this child beat nearly to death and you do anything other than get her immediately to the best help you can as fast as you can get her there.
Well, that's an indication of why I say I think the relationship is sick. I mean, that would be a normal response as far as I'm concerned, that if you, like I walked into my house and found this baby and I immediately called the police. I mean, there's nothing else, and an ambulance. There's nothing else that you would do.
And you have no idea what set your grandson off.
I have not had any contact with him since that day when I called him and told him I was going to kill him if I got my hands on him.
Well, describe him outside of this incident.
Jordan is always difficult. He was born and diagnosed in his early years with ADHD, ADD, personality disorders, low IQ, almost borderline retarded. He had a lot of trouble in school. He was shoplifting at 8 or 9 years old. Never had a job, never had a car, never had any possessions to speak of. Tore up, sold, destroyed everything he ever had. About a year before the baby was born, I co-signed for an apartment for him because he didn't have any credit. He did about $16,000 worth of damage to that apartment by the time he was out of it. Anything that was broken, could be broken, was broken. He just flew into rages.
Okay, here's my question. Knowing that that's the history, and everybody knew this history, the school knew the history, the state knew the history, his mother knew the history, then why in God's name would anyone allow him access to an infant child?
Well, when Jenny told me that they were pregnant, I was appalled. And I said, this has the potential to be such a disaster in so many ways you can't even imagine. She said, oh, you're so negative. I said, Jenny, I'm not being negative, I'm being realistic. And I mean, I foresaw all kinds of disasters, never this.
All right, next, Jenny says she will always have a relationship with Jordan, her son, even after he beat his own baby nearly to death. In fact, she says she would stand by him even if he had killed Lee. So we're going to talk to her next.
When I saw the photos of Lee's abuse, it made me shake. He kicked her in her head. You could almost see a footprint.
And later, I've been at this 45 years. Somebody with a 54 IQ did not write that letter.
Tomorrow, from nurse's aide to living in her car.
I didn't put myself in this position.
You quit your job, then you get evicted.
I didn't get evicted.
She thinks there's a conspiracy.
Everybody was starting to act weird. The lady at the rent-a-car, people in my community.
What's the common denominator?
I'm not good at fractions. My blood is on your hands. That's when I was angry.
Yeah, and you get angry a lot.
Oh, stick around. That's nothing.
That's tomorrow.
You just met him 15 seconds ago, and you're starting to fight with him.
Then, on Thursday.
Jenny and her son have a dysfunctional relationship. She says she has to stand by him and that he deserves to be a parent. I flew into a rage when she said that to me. I slammed my hand down on the table and hollered. He relinquished all of his rights. Today, he put her on the floor and stomped on her.
Well, Jenny says she will always have a relationship with Jordan despite his being sentenced to 12 years in prison for nearly beating his 1-month-old baby to death.
My mom has threatened to kill Jordan from the day that we discovered Lee had been abused. It's devastating to hear my mom speak like that of her own grandson. If my mom saw Jordan out in public, she absolutely would attack him. What Jordan did is absolutely horrific. But I'm really the only person that he has to talk to. I feel very strongly that he needs me.
My grandson died the day that he beat Lee. He hasn't existed in my life other than feeling that I would like to get revenge against him.
I've sent photos in the past of Lee to Jordan, like her Halloween costume. She does ballet and tap. I haven't told Lee anything about her father. We don't speak of him in the home. She's never spoken to Jordan. I do believe Jordan feels remorse for what he's done. However, almost 5 years later, Jordan is not able to admit that he did more than just open hand slap Lee. The other night, when I saw the photos of Lee's abuse, was the first time that I had seen them in 4 years. It made me shake. I could just see that he kicked her in her head. You could almost see a footprint. I have conflict all day, every day. How I am supposed to continue to love and support my son after he did such a horrific thing to my daughter. It's a minute-by-minute struggle of my life.
You still have a relationship with your son, and you say you plan to continue to have one with your son.
I love him endlessly, and I will never turn my back on him. And I feel strongly about that because as I grew up, in my teenage years, my brother moved to my father's home, and I watched my mom turn her back on him. And I vowed from that day that I will never, ever turn my back on my children, ever. That he's my son.
Okay, define turning your back. And you say support and not turn your back.
I support him as my son, meaning I will always be available to him emotionally and supportively as his mother.
Okay, and you would support him all the way to death row. If he did something and they were executing him on death row, you would go there for his execution and support him in the last moments of his life, right?
Yes, I would.
No matter what he did, you would support him in the last moments of his life.
Yes, I would.
Okay, I get that. So, okay, I'm a parent. I understand that. What I don't understand is you making excuses for what he did, saying it's not his fault. He was abused. It's not his fault. He has psychological disorders or developmental disorders. It's not his fault. He's a victim himself. That's excusing the behavior, and there's a reason that's a problem with me, because you don't hold him accountable, then you don't enforce certain guidelines that have been put in place.
To me, his disability is not an excuse for what he did to Lee. It doesn't excuse the behavior. It simply puts it into a little bit of perspective for me.
Very little. And you pled for leniency with the judge.
I didn't feel like the prison system was going to reform him or teach him a lesson, because he is low IQ, he's low cognitive ability.
You made a list of excuses of why he should not be accountable. Said, I will not give up on any of my babies. I forget how serious the situation really was. He deserves to know how Lee is doing. Phone calls, emails, letters to and from Jordan. These are excuses for letting him contact her.
I'm not letting him contact her. He does not speak to her, and I would not let him, and that is not true. He is not speaking to her. I am protecting her. Yes, I send him pictures once in a while, and
that's in violation of the guidelines. You're not allowed to send him pictures.
He's not allowed to have contact. He's allowed to have pictures.
Yeah, I don't think you're reading that right.
I've never even seen a copy of the restraining order.
Yeah, well, you might want to get a copy of that. Next, Jenny claims she has never allowed Lee to talk to her abuser, but Emma is certain that she has. We'll talk about that next. I love to hear you on the phone. That is a violation of the restraining order, and it is also a violation of common sense. And later,
I placed a daughter up for adoption when I was 15 years old, so I can be compassionate with Jordan because I always wanted pictures of my birth daughter, and I feel like it brings him. Jordan writes to me regularly, and these are just some of the letters that he sent me. You're always there for me, as if you have no worries of your own. Thank you for believing in me and loving me, despite the times I caused you doubt and worry. I stay in such close contact with Jordan because I am really Jordan's lifeline. You made no mistakes with me. I just didn't listen to you. Despite his decisions in his life, I still love and support him very much. I want you to know that I will make you proud of me. Your only son, Jordan.
well, Emma says that her worst fear came true when she heard Lee pretending to speak on the phone to Jordan, the father who nearly beat her to death when she was a baby. Now, she says she knew Jenny had been lying and breaking the restraining order that forbids any contact between Lee and her abuser. She was playing with the phone, correct? Yes. And you said, who are you talking to? And what did she say?
She said, Jordan. And my blood ran cold. I knew she wasn't talking to him. I knew she was pretending to talk. And I just took the phone from her. Jenny and Lee were living with me at that time. We took the phone downstairs. I gave it to Jenny, and I said, Jenny, Lee tells me that she's been talking to Jordan. And Jenny immediately said, well, she hasn't been. I said, I understand that. I said, she's just pretending. But I said, the fact that she knows his name horrifies me.
Why would she be pretending to talk to him? Well, how would she even know to do that?
It's not like he died. I still speak his name. She doesn't know who he is at all. She doesn't know that he's my son. She doesn't know that he's her birth father, but she has heard the name, Jordan.
This is a letter to Lee from Jordan. He says, quote, I love to hear you on the phone. Pretty soon, you will be able to talk more and more.
He can hear her in the background. He can hear her voice.
Okay. I love to hear you on the phone. That is a violation of the restraining order, and it is also a violation of common sense. This man stomped her head, gave her 2 brain bleeds, and he's saying, I love to hear you on the phone.
This was when she was a year and a half old. This was in 2016. Now that she's older, I don't speak with him on the phone.
Then he goes on to say, Daddy does better if he can just do it his way. When you get older, you will understand what I'm talking about. This suggests 2 things to me. Number 1, he still thinks what he knows is best. And number 2, I've been at this 45 years. Somebody with a 54 IQ did not write that letter.
Okay.
So to say he's intellectually challenged, so he's not accountable for what he did, that you can explain these things away because he's intellectually challenged, that is not the writings of someone with a 54 IQ.
I didn't diagnose him.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
You just said that now that Lee is older, this was when she was a year and a half. In February of this year, when you were living with me and that incident with the telephone occurred, she was 4.
Yeah, and she wasn't on the phone with him.
She pretended to be on the phone with him.
Because she's pretending.
At the age of 4.
She's pretending to be like me.
You're saying that after a year and a half, you didn't have contact with him on the phone. You were having
No, I didn't say that. I said
Did
he's
she?
not contacting her. He is not hearing her on the phone.
Okay.
Well, this profoundly disabled man also wrote her a song. And in the song, which goes on for 2 pages here, as you can see, open your arms, take me in, I'll be your friend until the end. Baby, forgive me now, help me through this bumpy road so I can help you grow this old. Has she seen this?
No.
Have you read it to her?
No. And I really doubt that he wrote that in his own words. That's clearly out of a magazine or something.
That is his handwriting.
Yeah.
Okay, next, Emma says Jenny has a temper that flips like a switch. She says Jenny can't control her rage and is worried that Lee not only sees it, but might get the brunt of it. We'll be right back.
Regular. Music. Go on dissolve.
Nice. Tape bump in.
When have I ever said that he'll be at Christmas or Thanksgiving?
You said that at my house one day, and I said, not at my house, he won't.
No, I've never said that.
And later,
Jenny gets angry, she curses, rages out of control. In Lee's presence, Jenny has a tendency to abuse alcohol because of her unhappiness.
I feel like I'm a good mom because I would never, ever turn my back on my children, ever.
Tomorrow on an all-new Dr. Phil. From nurse's aide to living in her car.
I didn't put myself in this position.
She thinks there's a conspiracy.
Everybody was starting to act weird. A lady at the rent-a-car.
what's the common denominator?
I'm not good at fractions.
That's tomorrow.
I can relate to Jordan having to not be able to raise his daughter. I placed a daughter up for adoption when I was 15 years old, so I can be compassionate with Jordan because I always wanted pictures of my birth daughter. Lee is absolutely beautiful, so very smart. She's just really excelling in life. Though Jordan doesn't deserve to know how Lee's doing, I am super proud of Lee, and I feel like it brings him some joy in a situation where there is no joy being in prison.
Well, Emma says Lee needs to be in a safe home with no communication to her abuser, not incoming, not outgoing. And I agree with what you're saying, particularly when I hear what he's saying, because he's saying, we need to do this my way. So it's not like I'll listen to anybody because my judgment is obviously the worst in the history of the world, so I'll listen to anybody. That's not what he's saying. He said, no, I know best. I'm going to do this my way. They try to tell me, but I'm going to do this my way. So it doesn't sound insightful or remorseful to me whatsoever. And he's still showing signs of impulse control issues. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
He's writing letters and talking to Lee, which is clearly in violation of the restraining order, whether she gets them or whether she doesn't. One of those, he wrote that he wants to kill his father in a letter. He's in a gang in prison. He's been in multiple fights. He beat up a child molester. He's showing a lack of impulse control in a highly structured environment, which I can tell you would predict really poor impulse control in a less structured environment. In a letter that was from Jordan to Jenny, in terms of not taking accountability, he said, but it's not my fault. It's not my blank fault that I have so much anger and emotions. It's not my fault that I'm PDD or whatever I have. It's not my fault I was abused. It's not Lee's fault that what I did to her. It's not my fault that I went through the I went through. It's nobody's fault but their own. And it's not my fault when the day comes I decide to kill my dad. It's not my fault that I do what I do. Those are the kind of writings that you find after somebody's gone and shot up a place. This is not a stable individual.
No.
And
Never has been.
just in my opinion. And this is what I do for a living. There's anger and a lack of impulse control. And those two things equal things like stomping a baby, killing somebody, This is high risk.
Very.
And your concern is that she is keeping the door open to this child.
Well, he becomes eligible for consideration for parole in August of 2020. My concern is that he'll show up on her door, that he'll be allowed in, that he'll be allowed to have contact with Lee. What I would like is assurance from Jenny that that won't happen, that she will keep him away from Lee. That's all I want. I just want Lee to be safe. I want her to be safe and happy and protected. And I just don't feel like Jenny has given me that. You know, she's told me on numerous occasions that he's going to come to Christmas and he's going to come to birthdays, and I just don't want that.
When have I ever said that he'll be at Christmas or Thanksgiving?
You said that at my house one day, and I said, not at my house, he won't.
No, I've never said that.
Well, next, Emma says Jenny was reported to the Department of, DHS just last month. We'll talk about why when we come back. This is a very high-risk situation with this child being removed. And if they find out that you're in violation of this restraining order, they're very likely to take drastic actions. And later,
At one of his court appearances, he asked me to leave. He was afraid that I would manage to get a gun into the courtroom and I would kill him. I would like for him to retain that image of me. The only thing I have to say to him, I'm waiting for you.
Tomorrow, from nurse's aide to living in her car.
I didn't put myself in this position.
You quit your job, then you get evicted.
I didn't get evicted.
She thinks there's a conspiracy.
Everybody was starting to act weird. A lady at the rent-a-car, people in my community.
what's the common denominator?
I'm not good at fractions. My blood is on your hands. That's when I was angry.
Yeah, and you get angry a lot.
Oh, stick around. That's nothing.
That's tomorrow.
You've just met him 15 seconds ago, and you're starting to fight with him.
Then, on Thursday,
I am obsessed with taking 100,000 steps a day.
is she obsessed with fitness?
She spends 11 to 13 hours jogging every day in circles around her coffee table.
That's Thursday.
Closed captioning provided by...
For a cold sore, I use Herpes-L. It penetrates deep to treat. It soothes, moisturizes, and creates an SPF 30 barrier to protect against flare-ups caused by the sun. Herpes-L.
Bumping in set, shot in with music and applause. Here we go.
Emma fears that her daughter Jenny is a terrible parent who is putting Lee in danger.
My mom does criticize me about how I parent my children.
Jenny gets angry, she curses, rages, out of control in Lee's presence.
With Lee, she says that I am a little bit too hard on her, that Lee is nothing like Jordan. She blamed me for not disciplining him enough. My mom would tell me that he did need his ass beat on numerous occasions.
Jenny and her husband fight in front of Lee. He said, you're doing that in front of the baby. What are you teaching her?
I do believe I made the right decision adopting Lee.
I think Jenny has a tendency to abuse alcohol because of her unhappiness.
I feel like I'm a good mom because I would never, ever turn my back on my children, ever.
I don't think you're seeing this clearly, but by no stretch of the imagination do I think you endorsed what he did. I want to be very clear about that. What I do think is that you have compassion for him and can make a case in your mind for why he would be the way he is. And as a result, I think you're more forgiving than an objective individual would be because this is your child. And I think you are allowing him to have an expectancy set that he's going to be able to reunite with this child. And when he gets out and finds out that's not the case, he's going to feel betrayed by you and could be a very high-risk relationship for you at that point, because he's going to feel like you've given him the indication that, you know, we can forgive and forget and move on. And that's not the case. You don't have the right to do that. That's not your decision anymore. That was the court's decision. The court's decision was that this is a very high-risk individual for this little girl, and I promise you The court's intention is not for him to see pictures of her, not for him to keep the hope of that relationship alive. And it's just not going to work well when he gets out and finds out that that's going to be enforced, and it is going to be enforced, because if you don't enforce it, the courts will, and neither one of you will have access to this child. If this continues, you may not be an option for Lee. And that's the issue that we get down to, because according to Emma, if you experience anger and road rage and fights in front of Lee and alcohol problem and smoking marijuana and a suicide attempt in 2018, and a month ago, DHS was involved for you bringing Lee to concerts with alcohol and marijuana and leaving Lee home alone with a disabled husband. It gets to be a situation where the court steps in and says, this is a violent, dangerous environment for this child. So you've got to take measures to demonstrate that that's not the case. If not, this is a very high-risk situation with this child being removed. And if they find out that you're in violation of this restraining order, then given the severity of what was done to her before, they're very likely to take drastic actions. So what would those actions be? How likely is that to occur? I'm going to give you my thoughts when we come back, and we're going to hear from an expert on what's likely to happen here. We'll be right back. Underway. All we need is you. If you're going to be in the Los Angeles area and want to watch a live taping, visit drphil.com and click tickets. Tickets are free, and I hope to see you soon.
I am terrified for Jordan to be released from prison because I don't know how to parent both of them and keep them separated.
At one of his court appearances, he asked me to leave. He was afraid that I would manage to get a gun into the courtroom and I would kill him. I would like for him to retain that image of me.
I do think that Jordan would hurt Lee again. He would do it simply out of not being able to control his anger.
There's not a chance in hell that I want any kind of relationship with him ever.
When Jordan gets out, I would like for him to participate in Christmas and Thanksgiving.
My only remark to her is, just give him this message, Jenny. I'm waiting for him. It's the only thing I have to say to him. I'm waiting for you.
Well, Jenny says her son is up for parole and could be out within 30 to 60 days. Were you aware it was that soon? And you were saying you never said you want him around for birthdays and Christmas. You just said on tape you want him around for birthdays and Christmas.
Yeah, it's funny how you cut that, because I didn't say that I wanted him and her there. I didn't say I want Jordan and Lee in the same house
No,
at
you're
Christmas.
setting up a paper tiger here. You're not going to do that with me. You're not going to do it with the court either.
What?
So you're saying, oh, you're taking this out of context. You cut that funny, like I'm trying to say that you said you wanted Lee and Jordan together at Christmas. That's not what I'm saying at all. We didn't cut anything anyway. The way we cut it is you saying you want him around for holidays.
Yes.
You have custody of your daughter. This is your daughter now. It's not his, it's yours.
Yes.
And you're either going to have someone that has perpetrated violence within this family and against your daughter inside this family constellation, or you're not. You can have a relationship with him separately if that's what you choose to do. You're an adult, that's what you can choose to do, but you don't have the right to do that within a family constellation with the victim that he almost beat to death.
I agree. I agree with you.
I want to introduce Dr. Charles Sophie here. Dr. Sophie is the board-certified psychiatrist in 3 clinical specialties, and he is also, coincidentally, the medical director of the Department of Child and Family Services for Los Angeles, which, by the way, is the largest agency of its kind in the country. And what that means, he's seen it all, he's seen it everywhere. You're listening to this situation. It seems to me she is in clear violation here of both the spirit and the letter of what has been dictated by the court.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, he has not even earned the right to see his daughter or even be a parent. And why are you allowing that? He hasn't earned that right. He beat her. He shouldn't have that privilege. But I think you're blinded by the things that happened in your life. When you had you couldn't talk about your brother. 15-year-old, you had to give up a child. You're comparing yourself to him. You haven't resolved that stuff within yourself. It's blinding you to him, besides his own issues. You need to draw the line or you're going to lose this kid. You really are.
We're telling you how the system works. You have to make a decision where your loyalty lies. Does that mean you have to have no relationship with your son going forward? No, it does not. But it means you have to have an absolute separate satellite relationship with your son going forward, and those two paths shall never cross. Never. You should not be sending him pictures of her. You should not be letting him hear her. As Dr. Sobey says, he does not have the right. He sacrificed that right. That doesn't mean you need to abandon him, but they need to be in two orbits that never touch.
And that's exactly why I asked to be here. That's exactly why I'm here, was to hear what you just said.
Well, I'm going to tell you how to make that happen. So what is the best plan? And the best plan is the best plan for Lee. And I've got a serious piece of advice when we come back.
Tom, you can see sneak previews of upcoming shows. Log on today.
First, I want to say to you, getting a gun and shooting this guy is not a solution, okay? You don't want to spend the rest of your life in prison. You need to be out where you can see after those that you love and care about. I hope I've been very clear here. I'm not trying to paint you as some cold-hearted individual that doesn't care that Lee was almost beaten to death. I'd have no question in my mind that you would have traded places with her in a second and say, if you're going to beat somebody to death, do it to me, not her. I have no question in my mind that you hate what happened to her. You didn't have to adopt this child. You didn't have to, at your age, start all over with a new one, but you did. You stepped in, you filled the gap, and you're being there for this child, and God bless you for doing that, okay? But you have to decide that you can have a relationship with him that is 100% separate from her. And you need to start communicating that to him right now. And then you need to look at her and know, I'm not over here holding hands with your abuser and betraying you. That's someone that I'll never mention the name, I'll never talk to you about. That's something separate. He's not in your life, nor will he ever be. Now, she gets to be an adult someday and she wants to go find that person and look them up. That's up to her. Not you, that's up to her.
Right.
But right now, you need to start telling him that. You need to draw that line. And when you do, it will feel better. And I have this theory. My theory is people know the truth when they hear it. Isn't what I'm telling you the truth?
Yes.
Isn't that what you need to do?
Yes.
Don't you need to put up a barrier and say, I will be your mother and you will be my son, but we're not crossing back over here. You sacrificed that right when you did what you did, and don't you ever talk to me about her again.
I just haven't known how to do that.
Okay. And now you do, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to get you some help with that, because you're going to need some support and some strength in doing that. Somebody that you can talk to about that. And you can give yourself permission to be his mother without feeling like you're betraying your daughter. And that'll take a big burden off you, will it not? Can we do that?
Yeah.
Good fences make good neighbors. And this is a good fence you need to build. All right, I want to thank all of my guests today, and a special thanks to Dr. Charles Sophie. Dr. Sophie, for more information about today's show, log on to drphil.com. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and know that I read your comments and questions every day.